I wasn't expecting this much like this many
Comeback
good
podcast didn't prepare me for this, dude. Holy fuck.
Yeah, dude. The comeback podcast was G-rated, bro. It was chilled out. That is insane.
James will freaking watch out for James.
Yeah, that's crazy. So after the camp, you just came home and you were straight edged and you never did anything wrong ever again, and you went on a mission, right? That's how it went.
Nah, bro, not even. I wish, dude. I wish that was it. That would have been amazing, you know. Yeah. So I got back.
Sorry. I was curious. You hadn't done drugs at this point yet, correct? Or
no, I hadn't. No. I'd smoked like one time, but like not really, and I didn't really even get high. I did it wrong. I just breathed into my mouth and on my lungs, and like I didn't even really want to smoke. I just kind of did it because a bunch of the young men in our ward, all the priests would do drugs before like doing priest ordinances and stuff. It was really bad. And so they were the ones that kind of were like, yeah, you should try it and stuff. And so we didn't have like great role models in my ward, unfortunately, at the time. But you know, and so no, I'd done that, and I'd like vaped a couple times, and like I drank like a Mike's Hard Lemonade like once, but it wasn't like anything crazy. I wasn't really going off, even when I was dating the girl, like. But I should say we had broken a lot of chastity. My parents knew about that. So like, you know, we weren't being good on that end and stuff. And that, unfortunately, this is the devil's plan. That happened the night before I went to EFY. Like my parents had scheduled for me to go to EFY. And I just barely met this girl, like not very much time previously. And then that happens. And then the whole time I'm like, you know, everything at EFY just went in one ear and out the other. Cause like I just committed a very like pretty serious sin. Right. So yeah, so that was, so I'd done a little bit, but nothing crazy, you know, nothing too bad. And yeah, so when I got back, that's kind of how it was for quite some time, is that like I'd still done a couple things. I started vaping quite a bit, but like I didn't really smoke weed. I didn't really drink a lot. I'd only done it a few times. I got back and my parents like, all right, like you did the wilderness camp, like we're going to give you some space to kind of date this girl. So I'm like, all right. So I keep dating this girl. And she waited for me, kind of. And so I got back. And so I got back and, you know, we start dating again. We're together for like a year and a half. And then, you know, I kind of found out about some things. She cheated on me a couple times. It was gnarly. I tried to get over it. And so quick side note, I actually was going to run away again because like basically –
he's a runner.
He's a runner, dude. He is a freaking runner, dude.
Life gets hard, dude.
Just run as hard as you can.
Just run. Yeah. So, So I, as soon as my parents found out about my girlfriend cheating on me, they were like, oh, like, you know, that was like their time to pounce, right? You know, they're like, okay,
leverage. They got leverage, bro.
Yeah, exactly. You got it. So like, look, you need to break up with this girl. Like, we're gonna break you guys up. Like, and I'm like, bro, it was gonna happen anyways, right? So I was like, just let it. I'm gonna try and forgive her, try and move on, but like, please, just let me like live. I just didn't want them to like, just like you said earlier. I wanted to quit. I didn't want to get fired, right? I wanted to break up with. I wanted all that, but they're like, no. We're gonna do it. We're gonna all this, and so basically they organized a meeting between my parents and my girlfriend's parents, which I'd only met her stepdad and her mom. I'd never even met her dad in the year and a half we were together, but somehow my parents got her dad there, which is crazy, and he didn't even know that we were together. Nothing, which is crazy.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So they like set up this meeting at my dad's office. So while they're there, I'm like, all right, bro, I got to dip. So like I learned everything that I missed the first time. I didn't have my social security number, my credit card number, my driver's license number, birth certificate information, all these things that I wish I would have had. So
and now you have survival skills. Now you have wilderness survival skills.
Yeah. So I'm like, all right, I got this. So I hid all the keys to my parents' cars besides the spare keys that I took with me. And then I printed out all the information that I would have wanted to have in the beginning. I printed it all out on this little laminated card, and I hid it in my wallet underneath the soles of my shoes. I put it in this little, like, just a bunch of different places, so I had it with me. And then I packed a little go bag, and I'm like, all right, when they get back, like, it's time. Like I'm gonna go to the meeting and I'm gonna agree to everything they say. I'm gonna do everything they say to do. I'm just gonna play along, and then as soon as I get back, I'm out of here. And then the whole plan that way is that they wouldn't have had a way to come after me because I hid all the spare keys, right? And I was gonna take my dad's truck. So, anyways, that was the whole plan. So I pull up to this meeting, and at the time I struggled a little bit with, like self-harm. This is a little bit before all this was going on, like when I was younger. And like when I talked about kind of having some struggles with suicide, at this point, it was just like the only way that I felt like I could tell my parents, like, please just like bug off. Like, just let me do my thing.
Yeah.
Like, let me try and handle this on my own and stuff. And so, but they told all of that to my girlfriend's parents. And so,
jeez.
Yeah, they're like, look, he's suicidal. He's all this and all these things, which was mainly just that, like, I wanted to be able to do my own thing. Right. So I pull up, and this was like, I'm 17 at this point. This was some heavy stuff because I pull up and they're like, hey, look, like they're trying to convince me, the stepdad, the mom, my dad, like, look, you just got to break up. Like, you got to take the suicide card off the table. You got to this, but like, you got to be done. Like, this is it. And I'm like, look, I love your daughter. I'll take care of her, all these things. I'm trying to be a good man. Anyway, so then the dad, who barely spoke English, like pauses, and I've never spoken a word to him. And he looks at me, he's like, son, I can tell that you love my daughter. And he's like, if you love my daughter, you'll go to school tomorrow, you'll break up with her, and you won't even say anything about this meeting. Because she didn't even know about the meeting.
Dang.
And he's like, you won't even tell her anything so that she doesn't hold it against us. And it just hit me, bro. It was heavy. And I was like, it was gnarly. So I went home.
Dude, holy soap opera. We got to make hey, let's all get together. We'll make a TV series. Yeah.
Oh,
we can make a TV series, dude.
At least a 4-episode TV series. At least.
Yeah.
I don't even know. Could you fit the Wilderness Survival Camp in 4 episodes? I don't think so.
Oh, bro, I only told one story from the Wilderness Survival Camp.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Okay, 4 seasons.
We got 4 seasons,
in
bro.
This kid named Taylor's ear. We had that happen. We had one kid run through the camp with a knife up to his neck. He's like, I'm going to kill myself. And then he jumps the fire, and there are just 2 trail walkers running after him. We had that. One of our trail walkers, like, almost got basically had a face off with a mountain lion. That happened. We got lost. I drank water out of a cow tank that was pure cow piss. We've been hiking for like 8 hours, and we pull up and there's no water, and it's covered in these green lily pads, and that's the only water we had, and it was just literally cow piss. Like, and the cows are literally pooping in the water as we're using it to drink, and that's all we had. We almost died then. Yeah, it was, bro. I'm skipping a lot, bro. I'm skipping a lot,
no, dude. Oh, I'm loving it, bro. This is crazy.
I mean,
yeah, we got to think serious. We could. This would actually genuinely would be a really good TV series. I don't think we could do it, but actually it would be pretty cool because, well, all right. So obviously this thing with your girlfriend was nuts. And then you eventually you wore your parents out, right? Like you had like a party or something, and then they sent you off to Utah to live with your grandma. And I know the party is crazy, and you got arrested and you were there for a couple of days in another jail. So this is that's your second time. In a jail cell. And then you got kicked to Utah to live with your grandma.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so you got kicked to Utah to live with your grandma. How did you? I guess like from there, at least in the Comeback podcast, I didn't really catch what happened from there because you guys started talking about the importance of people who bring people in that are going to take care of them, which I love. But as far as your story goes, where were you guys where were you guys living with your grandma? Where does what city, I guess you could say, does your grandma live in?
She's in Lehigh. Yeah, she's in Lehigh. It's funny because it's like I'm here now, and it's like I've lived in 3 of the bedrooms in the basement at 3 different times in my life. And like the farthest bedroom, which I would compare to the terrestrial kingdom, maybe it's sacrilegious, maybe not, but it's just kind of ironic, It's like all the 3 different stages of my life.
To terrestrial, to where you're at right now.
Exactly, exactly.
The celestial bedroom.
The celestial. I'm clean now. I'm living the celestial lifestyle. I'm thinking celestial. I'm following the prophet. All that. You try my best. But like, when I was in the farthest room, I was smoking weed. I just started getting off track, and that's when I kind of, because like after the whole breakup with my girlfriend, and that was heavy for a 17-year-old because it was like,
yeah, dude. No, but I think breakups for teenagers are just stupid. Like teenagers are dumb in relationships, but at the same time, bro, breaking up with someone in high school is like, horrid.
No
Like it,
small feat. No
yeah,
small.
dude, it low-key sucks. And I was telling my wife about this the other day. I was like, bro, breaking up with someone after high school is so much easier because during high school you got to still see them in your freaking biology class, and then when they
Yeah.
start dating somebody, you got to like literally see them in a relationship, and
Yeah.
you're over here struggling with like. For me, it was like I struggled big time with my mental health and stuff. So it was like
Yeah.
then I started acting crazy because I
Yeah.
just didn't. You're trapped, bro. Like at least
Yeah.
after, like I was, I was engaged before I got married. So I got engaged once already.
Uh-huh.
I've never seen her again since I broke up with her. Since we, and not that
Yeah.
that wasn't hard. It was a hard experience, but it's like I got to just get over it. Like it was so
Yeah.
much easier outside. I just moved to a
Yeah.
different state and never talked to her again, which was
Right.
so much easier. But when
Right.
you're in high school, it sucks. So
It's gnarly.
would you say that that's kind of a time when you turn more heavy to like drugs and alcohol?
Exactly. Yeah. That's why, I mentioned that because, it was hard because it was like, I didn't tell her about the meeting, right? I didn't tell her about the meeting and I just went and I broke up with her. And then, and it was tough, and then it was after that I just, I just kind of sent down. And then it doesn't help that after that, other things happened, right? That made it worse, and stuff. And so that's when I started drinking. I was like, bro, I'm done. Like I threw a party. We broke into a clubhouse in our hometown and stole some champagne. And then the next night we had this party and then the cops came and all that happened. All this stuff happened. Right. So, and then that's kind of when I came here and, when I first moved to Utah, I didn't have any friends. I ate lunch in the hallways on the floor and I'm in Lehigh at Skyridge where like nothing bad happens there, right? I didn't know anybody. I didn't have anywhere to get drugs. I didn't have anywhere to get like vape juice. I didn't have anywhere to get alcohol, like nothing. I didn't know anybody. And so, I ended up making some connections and meeting some people there that they didn't do anything either, but they were intrigued that I did. And that ended up being like my circle, right? And so that was kind of where things started. And then, so I lived with my grandma for quite some time. And then later on, like I mentioned, one of the guys that I met at the wilderness camp, I moved to Louisiana and did summer sales there, made some money, blew all the money on drugs, came back from there, moved back to Utah. And then that was kind of when my dad was like, hey, let me help you find an apartment. And he finds an apartment, which if anyone's listening, I hate to be the guy to say it, but do not get an apartment at University Gateway if you're a member of the church. Not a good idea. No good plan. Simply because the reason why the rent was so cheap, it was like $450. My dad's like, dang, that's a steal. And you get my own room, everything. I'm like, yeah, let's go. So I pull up. It turns out that one of your roommates will be a foreign exchange student. No big deal. And one of your roommates is a juvenile that got a scholarship to go to UVU and is now getting reincorporated back into society.
Dude, I feel so bad for that foreign exchange student, bro.
Bro, Keit, bro. He just came from Japan. He was just a chiller who liked to play the guitar. By the end of that semester, he was smoking weed. He didn't want to go to school. Bro, it was bad. It was bad.
Oh, no.
Yeah, bro.
That is terrible.
Yeah, it was.
This is the epitome of Alma the Younger, right? Like this is Alma the Younger. That's okay.
It's
So
true.
so you lived in that apartment. When did you start dealing? Did you, or had you already?
It was there. Yeah. So that apartment was where one of my roommates, like she was selling weed in high school, and his parents got arrested, and he was homeless and all this crazy stuff. And this kid, oh gosh, man, I could go on and tell tons of stories. I won't even say his name because he lives here, but yeah, he was just crazy. Like, and a bunch of people respected him like for no reason. He was like short, and yeah, there's a whole story about the murder sweater, but we won't go into that. That's a whole nother thing. But
Jeez Louise.
yeah, so
I mean,
all right, I'll tell the story of the murder sweater. Whatever, y'all can hear it.
Yeah, I was say we can cut the murder sweater story, but we gotta hear it.
Yeah. I don't even care. If it's on the podcast, I don't even care. So basically, so there's this guy. I won't say his name. That's when the whole getting the revolver thing happened. Right? That's when this happened.
The gun.
That's when this happened. Anyway, so basically what happened, I had a roommate who, like I said, we would throw parties and stuff, and we'd be there. And like one time, someone, we ran out of ping pong balls, we lost them, someone stepped on them, we're playing beer pong. And he looks at these two giant Samoan dudes. He's like, hey, you two go to Walmart and steal us some ping pong balls. And they're like, don't say a word. And they just left. And I was like, bro, what? And this kid's like 5'6", like 5'7". He's like short cowboy from Spanish Fork area. Not confirmed he's from Spanish Fork, but somewhere in that general vicinity. Anyways, and and he's like short. He wears camo all the time, all these things. And so it's his birthday. And he's like, hey, like, it's my birthday. I want to wear something nice. And I always wore this sweater that, ironically, I bought while I was in juvie in the second time in Colorado because they didn't have enough employees. So they took us to Ross to buy some wrestling equipment for one of the kids who was going to start wrestling. And we're just hitting Ross. And I'm like, bro, can I buy this sweater? I got my card. They're like, sure, it's chill. So I bought this sick sweater, dope sweater. And I bought it while I was in juvie. And so anyway, so he's like, hey, it's my birthday. Like, can I borrow it? Well, let me show you guys this sweater because
you got it, bro.
The relic, sweater, bro.
Dude. The relic.
The murder sweater. Okay?
This is, I love this sweater, bro. You guys don't got any idea, bro. These are embroidered flowers on here.
That's this a gangster sweater, bro.
Straight off of grandma's couch, bro. I love this. So anyways, so I got it and so this is the same sweater, but it's not the exact same sweater. Like it's the same model, but it's not physically the same one. And I'll tell you guys why. So what happened? It's his birthday. He's like, hey, I'm trying to wear something nice. Can I borrow that sweater? And I'd wear that all the time. Everyone knew like me by that sweater. So I wore it all the time. It was very recognizable, all this stuff. And so anyway, so they're like, yeah, can I borrow it? And I'm like, yeah, sure. It's your birthday. Go ahead. Have a good time. So he dips, he wears it. And then later on, I'm sitting in the living room and him and my friend Marcus, that's actually not his real name. So it works out because that's anyway. So Marcus dips with this kid and they leave. Marcus is the big, tall guy that I told you guys about earlier in a different story before we started recording. So Marcus, Marcus leaves with him and he's a big dude and they both leave and they come back and they're just panting and like, and sweaty. He's not wearing any of the clothes he was wearing before. They're all in a Walmart bag. They run in and slam the door and they run in and they go in his room and lock the door. And I'm like, okay, that's a little sus. So I go knock. I'm like, hey, what's going on? What's going on? What happened? And they're like, shut up. Nothing happened. Like, be quiet. And I'm like, what's going on? And I'm like best friends with Marcus. I'm like, bro, what the heck? This is weird. They never come out that whole night. I just go to bed. I'm like, whatever, it's chill. I go to bed. And then, the next day I'm like, yo, Marcus, what was that about? He's like, I won't tell you. And like, he would tell me everything, but he's like, I won't tell you. And I'm like, bro, what happened? He's like, I won't tell you. I'm not telling you. And fast forward 2 years later, I asked his wife about that. And she's like, yeah, he won't tell me. And I asked him, like, bro, you got to tell me what happened. It's been 2 years. He's like, for your own safety, I will not tell you what happened that night. And he still hasn't told his wife, right? So the next day, or like a couple days later, he gives me the sweater back. And there's a blood stain on the back of it. And I'm like, that's interesting. And I'm like, what happened? He's like, oh, dude, I'm sorry. My dog, like, she got her period and she bled on the sweatshirt, I'm pretty sure. And I'm like, okay, it's a stretch, but whatever. So I got the blood out of the sweatshirt. And of course I kept wearing it because it's sick. And probably not my smartest decision, right? But I keep repping it. I'm like, bro, that's not gonna stop me. Whatever. I didn't do anything. I'm chill. If anything happens, I'll tell them what happened. So, anyways, I keep wearing it. Fast forward, I move out. I'm living in a new house. I mean, this is like probably a year later. Yeah, this is about a year later. And this kid calls me and he's like, hey, do you still have that sweatshirt? And I'm like, yeah, why? He's like, bro, let me buy it off you. And I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, come on. I just love it. Let me buy it off you. I was like, no, dude, I'm not buying it. I'm going to see the sweatshirt. He's like, come on, I'll give you $100 for the sweatshirt. I'm like, no, I bought it in juvie. I love the sweatshirt. Come on, dude. I don't want to. Yeah, I'm not going to sell it to you. And he's like, whatever. Fast forward like a month goes by. He calls me again. He's like, hey, you still got that sweatshirt? I'm like, yeah, bro. Why? He's like, come on, let me buy it off you. He's like, I'll pay you $400.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, bro, what? He's like, come on, $400 for a sweatshirt? Just sell it to me.
Yeah, that's like a whole month's worth of rent right there, bro.
Yeah, exactly, bro. And And so I'm like, dude, I'm not I didn't want to sell it because I have the sweatshirt, but B, I would feel bad selling this sweatshirt for $400. Like, this kid's in college. I'm like, bro, I'm not selling a sweatshirt for $400. Like, come on, dude. Yeah, and I don't sell it to him. And I told my landlord at the time about this, and he's like, bro, that's weird. That's especially considering everything that happened with the sweatshirt. Right. So at the time, I was riding my little 125cc motorcycle from Provo to American Fork every day. It wasn't big enough to go on the freeway, so I had to take Geneva every day. It's the winter time. It's freezing cold. I drive 30 minutes to work every day on that thing, and it was miserable. I hated it. So, and I knew that. Anyways,
sorry, you've said his name a couple of times. We'll just block it out.
We can cut that out.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, we'll just edit it out.
Anyway, so he knew that, and he calls me and he's like, "Hey, do you still have the sweatshirt?" And I'm like, "Bro, come on." He's like, "Come on, just give me the sweatshirt." And I'm like, "Come on." He's like, "Hear me out. How about a car?" And I was like, "Are you kidding me?" I'm like, "Bro, he knows I need a car bad." And I'm like, "You gotta be kidding me." So I talked to my landlord. He's like, "Look, bro, here's the thing. You don't know what he's gonna do to get that sweatshirt if you say no." He's like, "So I'd take the car. I'd do it." So anyways, yeah. So I traded the sweatshirt for the car, and then I sold the car for $1,000, and I didn't even put my name on it at all. Like, he gave me the title. He's like, "You sign here, take it to the DMV, and they'll give you the title. Like, that's all. This is the bill of sale. It's right here." And so I just put it up for sale on Facebook, and I said the exact same thing to the lady I sold it to. So I'm like, "Hey, you just sign here, take the DMV, they'll give you the title." And she paid me for it, and I never talked to her again. Because I'm like, bro, I don't know where the car came from.
Yeah.
For all I know, it's connected. Like, he's trying to pin me. So I'm like, I'll sell it to some random lady, and she should be fine. She knows nothing about this car, so like she'll be fine. So anyways, yeah. So that's the story of the murder sweater. And then on my mission, I bought it again because
another Ross.
Yeah, no. I went online. Someone asked me. I was telling the story to like a couple of missionaries, and they're like, "Bro, I gotta see the sweater." And I look it up, and I found a used version of the sweater online for $40. I'm like, bet. So I copped it. And I bought it, and now I got it
guy for $1,000.
Holy cow! All right, all right.
So back up.
The stories are great, bro. And so you were still working a job, so you never, like, drug dealing never replaced your income, or did you eventually like turn to drug dealing instead of working?
No, never in place of working. I mean, because here's the thing. We basically wanted to sell drugs so we could have money to buy as much weed as we wanted to. And so like, that's what, ironically, what a lot of drug dealers do. They sell drugs to pay for their own drugs, or, whatever, or maybe they're doing it as their full income, but it's like, they sell drugs to buy cars or guns or whatever it is. Right. So anyways, yeah. So, we're selling drugs. It's, we made decent money. It wasn't anything crazy, but it was me and two other guys. So it wasn't like we were just like loaded, because we split it between all of us, and we pretty much all just used the money to buy weed. And so, because we were all big stoners and all that stuff. So yeah, that was kind of the drug dealing. Definitely fell down, went down a bad path for quite some time. And
I want to ask, and I'm sorry, just because I don't want to take too much of your time, but so we're at this position here, right? Kat and I have talking to you. If any listeners are listening right now, you're a crazy person to them, right? Like you've done like insane things. You've been in and out. You could say you've been in and out of prison since you were 17 till you were 23, and then you'd also been doing drugs, selling drugs, possibly involved in a murder by some case, not actually, but like, but there was a murder that took place. And then, dude, you served a mission for under Dan Oaks, which is also really cool because that's our stake president growing up.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
No way.
Yeah,
that's crazy. I gotta tell him that. That's crazy.
I know, we gotta tell him too. Like, hey, you remember Van Taylor? We did a podcast with him, but yeah, we love Dan Oaks. So you becoming a missionary and going on a mission, and I know there's a whole story there of like you got a patriarchal blessing. You had to quit things, get clean, and stuff like that. And I want to dive into that, and I think we can. But I really want to talk about no, let's dive into that part. I think that's how did you get back? Like
bad.
how the crap did that even, like, how do you go from this person, especially, and I know that there's like quitting and stuff like that, but I also want to talk about like you're surrounded by everyone you know does drugs probably. Everyone that doesn't do drugs probably either like everyone that you know that doesn't do drug probably like hates you a little bit or
Yeah.
doesn't want to be associated with you. I
Right.
know that like for me, like if I had a buddy that was like you that just called me
Mhm.
up one time was like, hey dude, can we start hanging out? Like for me, I would be like, yeah, under some circumstances, like
Yeah.
what do can I debrief you a little bit? Like I don't want to bring this into my family and stuff.
Right.
So
Right.
you're isolated and stuff. Like how does that go for you? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
how did you get back, I guess? So
Yeah. So there was a period where I hadn't had, so it was bad then, but it kind of was like I was young, I couldn't buy alcohol, so it wasn't like horrible. It wasn't until later on when later on in life when I was living in Texas actually, and that's when I really just like started drinking like crazy. That was my main drug, you could say, was alcohol, and that was the tough one. And so I was living in Texas, and I had a period where I hadn't had a single day that I'd gone without drugs or alcohol in about 3 years. So it was like every day.
holy crap. How old are
It
you
was
at
a
this
lot.
point? How old
At
are you
this
at this point?
point, at this point, let's see, I'm 22. Yeah, at this point, I'm 22. So, yeah, so it'd been about, yeah, roughly about 3 years. So it was like just a normal thing that like, I mean, it might have honestly even been longer than 3 years. And so it was just like, no matter what, even on the days when I didn't have anything, something would just come up. It was almost like, how God has like his miracles and it always works out when you don't have enough tithing. It was like Satan was doing the same thing. Like when I didn't have money, he's like, oh, like I'm gonna figure out a way to still get you stoned, or like I'm gonna figure out a way to get you alcohol, like whatever. It was crazy. And so Satan was working hard those days, right? And so it was about 3 years that I hadn't gone a single day without being sober. And I got my wisdom teeth out. And with your wisdom teeth out, you can't smoke and you're not supposed to drink alcohol. Well, I still drank and kept drinking and stuff. And then I started to think I was getting dry socket because I also smoked like 3 days after I got them out. And you're like, that's like a big no-no and stuff because like it's like worse than a straw. It's literally like a bong, which is like a giant straw. So it was bad, right? So anyway, so it had been, one night that just by happenstance, I was like, okay, you know what? Like, I don't want to get dry socket. That's going to cost some money. Like, I just got to not drink and not smoke for like this night. And so I went to bed and I'd been sober the whole day and sober that night. And I go to sleep and I fell literally into this really strange dream state that is like hard to really describe accurately. But I fall asleep, but I'm not really asleep. It's like I'm still fully awake. And in this dream, I saw myself in the future, and I had like three daughters, and I was married. And me, my daughters, and my wife, we were all super unhappy. Like nothing was going well, and we were super unhappy. Marriage wasn't good. I still had all these problems. It had gotten way worse, and I looked rough. And then a bunch of things happened that like I still honestly haven't even talked about that with like anyone, like not even anyone. And so a lot of other things happened in the dream. And then fast forward, I wound up in like a courtroom, and I'm there, and I'm just begging. I can't see the judge or like the lawyer or anything, but I know I'm in this courtroom, and I'm just like begging for more time, just to give me more time to like figure it out. And then I woke up, and how my normal day would go before this is, I'd wake up every day. I wouldn't be able to eat unless I smoked. But when I'd wake up, I would smoke and it would make me throw up. And so I would wake up, smoke, throw up, go back to bed for an hour. Then the weed would kick in. I would get a little bit hungry. I would eat a little bit. And the only reason why I was eating a little bit is because if I didn't eat before I drank, I would throw it up. And
wait,
so
you did this. You woke up and threw up every single day.
yeah, every day. Yeah, every day. You can ask my sister about that. It was like I went to
What
doctors. I'm asking them all about it, and they were just kind of like trying to tell me other things that it wasn't obviously like clearly it said I was smoking weed and drinking too much, right? And they're like, yeah, maybe it's acid reflux, all this, but I didn't want to accept that that's what it was. But it was every morning. I mean, I didn't have anything in my stomach, so a lot of time it was blood. I would wake up, I'd smoke, I'd throw up blood, and then go back to bed. And then even then when I would eat like like an English muffin with butter or something like that. It wasn't like, oh, now I can make eggs and veggies, like I ate like garbage. And and I did that so that I could be able to drink, right? And so from there, that's how my normal day would go. And then after I would drink a little bit, I'd get up at like, I'd actually get my full, like all the way up and like start hanging out at like 2 or 3 in the afternoon if I wasn't working, right? So anyway, that was kind of like a normal day. And so this day, when I got up after having that dream, everything in my body was like, bro, you just got to go back to bed. Like, just go back to bed. You didn't sleep at all. My body was tired. I was drenched in sweat. I was exhausted. And I'm like, oh, dude, I just really want to go back to bed. But I knew that all I needed to do at that point was just like stay awake. That's all it was, that I just needed to not go to bed. And so I like laid down for a second and then I like shot up. I'm like, no, dog, I gotta stay awake. I gotta do something. So I got up, I took a shower, I cleaned my room a little bit. I called the dentist about my dry sockets or the orthodontist, whatever. And then I'm trying to like be productive and stay awake. And I decided, I'm like, you know what? I think I need to like quit drinking. And then it was that day that I was like, okay, I think I'm going to try and quit drinking. Just that for now. And,
It's so funny that the dream, not you throwing up blood every single morning for like a year, but this dream is you being like, you know what, maybe this is bad lifestyle for me.
I had a dream.
Dude, that's, I mean,
or I had, sorry,
that's how it goes, dude.
I had a question. You said there was something like things that you haven't talked about. Are those things like, and obviously don't talk about them if you don't want to, but sorry, am I lagging? Am I freaking lagging here?
Right.
Yeah, you're lagging. You're good.
Shoot. Am I good now? Yo.
Just talk. We can hear you, bro. Just talk though.
Okay, well, okay, so we've talked about how you were kind of like Alma the Younger. And Alma the Younger had interestingly you had an interestingly similar experience to Alma the Younger. Was it like this?
Right.
Um, have you related to that at all when you read those stories?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's how I would describe those parts that I kind of haven't really disclosed with a lot of people. I would describe it exactly how he describes it. And that's that there were some like horrific things that happened in the dream and like some soul raking, like inexplicable, horrific paths that it felt like I was being shown like where I was headed and like what things were happening. And so by that logic, it was horrible things.
Yeah, dude, it's interesting because like I know that for you when you were in those positions for that time of your life, you didn't think that you would ever become like a horrible thing. But like from a third person point of view, from me looking and listening to your stories, not that you become a mission wouldn't even be, I mean, just getting you to sacrament meeting would have been an absolute miracle. Like getting on a mission is wild because the path you were on, brother.
Yes.
It's insane. It's insane. So you're sober for 2 days now, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, I gotta stop drinking. How did that go?
So, I was expecting my sister to kind of push back a little bit because at this point she'd also left the church and we kind of bonded over the fact that we were the two black sheep kind of thing. And so, when I left, I was kind of anticipating that she was going to be kind of like, oh, what are you doing? Like, you brought me out here, you left the church and I left the church and now you're going to leave me out here alone. Like, what are you doing? And I should be clear at this point. I was still like, oh, I'm not going back to church. It's like, no way, I'm just going to quit drinking. And even from an extension of that, I was like, oh, I'm not done smoking weed. I'm just going to quit drinking. Like, and I'm like, oh, I'm not done vaping. I'm just going to quit drinking. But that's how it started, right? So I left my room and I went out to my sister and I said, hey, Sid, like, I think I need to quit drinking. And she had seen, she could see every day that, I was waking up and smoking and throwing up and then drinking and then going back to bed and waking up and drinking more and drinking till I, till I was hammered. Right. And so she saw all of that and she wanted me to quit, but she wasn't the kind of person to tell me like, hey, like you gotta like change kind of thing. She was just kind of there for me. And so when I came out, I was like, hey, Sydney, I think I want to quit drinking. She was like, great. How can I help? And I was like, oh, I didn't really anticipate that. I thought it was going to be different. I thought there was going to be a different kind of reaction. And so she was there to support me, right? So I decided to quit drinking. A little while later, I could start feeling that I was like kind of like almost like what I would describe as like getting my spirit back, or like getting the spirit back or something. Because
yeah,
it's like
dude, God could talk to you, bro.
Yeah.
God to talk. You weren't under the influence. The Holy Ghost could be like, hey, we're here.
Hey,
We've been here.
We've been waiting. We've been watching you puke your guts up the last 2 years. We're ready for you. We've been cooking up some things in the background if you're ready for them. So yeah, you're right. Exactly. And so, it was so interesting because I was like, okay, well, I'm not gonna quit smoking weed, but I hadn't smoked in a few days because of the dry sockets and all that stuff. And I was like, okay, well, I'm not gonna smoke weed. And I smoked weed and I like hated it, and it like made me feel sick. And like before this, I could smoke, a whole bowl, but 3 or 4 bowls easy, take huge dabs, and I was just fine. And then I just smoked a little bit, and I'm like, whoa, this is not good. Like, what's going on? And I was like paranoid and like all this stuff. And I felt something like leave, and I was like, bro, that was weird. And I was like, okay, maybe I need to like quit smoking weed too. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna quit smoking weed, but I'm like, bro, I'm not gonna quit vaping. I mean, I was addicted to Juuls, which is like the gnarliest. Those suckers, they would get me. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to quit vaping. And then I remember every morning I would get up and I would start working. At this point, I was working from home. I would start working and I would just have like a normal day and I would feel really good. And then it's like the moment I'd hit my vape, I just felt this separation. And I was like, is that something? And I was like, dude, maybe I got to quit vaping. It's like, oh, I really don't want to do that. So then I quit vaping, and then I kind of weaned off that. And I was like, okay, I think I'm like doing something. So then I decided to start like just reading the Bible, a verse like every day. And I downloaded the Bible app. And I decided to go to like a Baptist church one time and a Catholic church. And I start going to random churches on Sundays to just try.
Yeah, anything but the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints, baby.
Absolutely. 100%. And it's funny because I said those almost as exact words, to my sister, which is funny because, so I'm like, I'm studying the Bible and I keep like kind of starting to have these like soul questions and stuff, trying to figure things out. And, I'm talking to my sister about them and she's like, and I'm like, but I look on this app and there's like all these answers are different with these different versions of the Bible, these different pastors. And I start asking pastors at different places. And I just felt like all these answers I was getting were just like all over the place. And I couldn't find anything like legit, like what I wanted to hear. Right. So I made the mistake or the good decision of talking to my sister, who is a return missionary, about it. And she's like, hey, have you like thought about reading the Book of Mormon? I'm like, bro, come on. No, I'm not reading the Book of Mormon. Don't.
Hey, once a missionary, always a missionary, even after you leave the church, dude. Bro.
Amen. Yeah. She did not quit. And that's the thing. She was there too. She saw a lot of what I was going through. She picked me up from the hospital one time. That's a whole nother story, a whole bunch of stuff that she was there for. Right. And so she had seen this kind of path. Right. And so she's like, yo, you should just stink and read the Book of Mormon. It's like, okay, loser, whatever. I'm going to read it. And so, and I start reading the Book of Mormon, but I actually watch the Book of Mormon videos and I read the chapters and I'm like, oh, this is actually like, it's different now. I'm kind of liking this. And I'm telling you, I'm like, JC, I'm actually kind of like feeling
sorry to interrupt you, but it is interesting if you've read the Book of Mormon, kind of getting into the Book of Mormon. The Book of Mormon answers the questions to life like in the first book. Like, why do good things happen to bad people or bad things happen to good people? It's like right there, Lehi's like, there cannot be good without bad. That's just the way things are. That's why we have the atonement, because bad things will exist in order for good things to come forth. Like, not even God's not outside of that. Like, that's just a law of the world. And it's right there in the first. It's just funny that you were finding these answers to your questions right at the very beginning. Like the very beginning of the Book of Mormon touches on those subjects, which is super cool. Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but it's super interesting.
Good. No, interrupt whenever. Because you're absolutely right. And that's how it was, right? Is that I kind of started to realize, like, okay, like I kind of relate with this Nephi guy, especially watching the videos. Like that helped me a ton. Because before I got ADHD, bro, I read the book and I'd be like, I don't understand any of this. I didn't get anything from it. But I watched the video and then I would read it and I'm like, oh wait, I like remember being taught about all this when I was growing up. And then I'm like having all these bombs go off, or I'm just slowly remembering all these things from growing up.
He's
like,
like,
oh my
you're
God.
like, bro, he broke his bow, dude. What is he gonna do for food?
Exactly. I'm like, bro, I remember this. I remember like when I read about Ammon, I'm like, this is a guy who chopped off the arms, dude. Okay, bro, let me see what happens here. Oh, King Ramon, I know this guy, bro. So like, you're exactly right. I start really getting in the Book of Mormon, and that was, just like President Nelson's promised us that, in enveloping or delving into the Book of Mormon on a daily basis will immunize you from the things of the world. Like it will protect you, and you will be safe from those things, right? Which is true, and it's a beautiful thing. That's where it comes from. The power comes from this book that no one can explain where it came from. There's no explanation. No matter how much anti you find or what you read, there to this day is nothing to explain where did the Book of Mormon come from if it's not from God. And I don't care if there's pioneers who killed people.
Baby.
It's like, I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh yeah, I'm proud of the church's history. It's awesome that some horrible things happen. Yeah, of course the church was messy when it was getting started. Let's talk about that for just a second. Who else had a messy church when they were here on earth trying to establish their church and it got messy? How about literally the Lord Jesus Christ himself? Bro, was it pretty? No way it was not pretty. Did people die? Of course people died.
Dude, I was reading. Have you guys ever just, I mean, I know you guys have, but when's the last time you guys just cracked open Acts, bro, and just started reading Acts? Dude, I was reading Acts and it was like, you can tell they're living basically communism. Like you sell everything you have and give it to the church. And there was one dude that didn't sell. He sold what he had, but he kept some of it.
Yeah, bro.
He died.
Yep.
He literally died. And then his wife.
Yeah, his wife runs up. He's like, well, what happened to my husband? He's like,
yeah. And then, the wife walks up and she's like, what happened to my husband? And they're like, hey, did you guys sell any land? And she realized what she had done wrong, and she dies as well, like on the spot. So yeah, if we want to go into like church history of any church in any history, when you first start, bro, it's freaking difficult. It's freaking weird too. Like we're talking about God and humans. What do we think's gonna happen? Like,
of course. And that's like proof that it's, that's part of the reason why it's like, of course that's going to happen. It's the true church. Like that's the truth. When Jesus was on the earth, if it wasn't true, bro could have just strolled through Jerusalem and preached the new gospel and everyone would have been happy to go lucky, like happy about all these things that are happening, but that's not how it happened. Right. And so of course it was messy. I would have been more concerned if it wasn't messy. And so that's, in the same way that we have the Book of Mormon with Jesus Christ, we have him being resurrected. It's like, okay, you cannot argue that he did not raise from the dead. Like that, there's no matter what happened, no matter all these things that took place, he is alive again. He rose again. And it's the same with the Book of Mormon. Like no matter what you look at, what you read, what you hear about, no one can explain where the heck did this Book of Mormon come from and what is it?
Yeah, the argument alone that I think could stand by itself is like, where did Joseph Smith get 60 pounds of gold?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like if you want to
use it to buy like acres and acres and acres.
Yeah, exactly. Or 60 pounds of lead. Let's say they were lead plates. It doesn't matter. Like, where did he get 60? Like lead back then was extremely expensive. Right. So it's like, just that argument by itself works against people like big time.
Yeah,
bro, Van, we need to get you on to do some apologetics, bro, next time.
Yeah, dude. We got to get you on for something else. Well, wait, but okay, so we're close, right? So Van,
we're close.
You're sobering up, right? You're
up.
reading the Book of Mormon. You're like, oh, dude, the Spirit is working, and Nephi's dope.
Yeah.
What happens, bro? How did you tell your parents, bro? Because I'm sure they were just fasting and praying and fasting and praying and fasting and praying. So how did that go?
Yeah. So at first, I honestly didn't tell my parents because to be completely frank, I had a couple acid trips before this, like years before this, where I like took acid and I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm wrecking my life and God is real. And I like went home and I literally read the Book of Mormon in across from that wall right here in this room on the other side of that wall.
terrestrial bedroom.
Yeah, the other one, the terrestrial, exactly. While I'm on that side, I read the book while under the influence of drugs, and I'm convinced, like, oh, this is all gonna happen. This is working and stuff. And then the next day, I'm like, oh, it's all fake. Never mind. I don't know what I was talking about. And then like another time, like I even went to church a couple times. I sobered up. I moved out of my apartment. That's actually what got me moved out of the apartment when I was with that kid, and I was involved with all those drugs and stuff. It's because I had one of those experiences, and I was like, you know what, I gotta get clean. I gotta sober up, and I moved out and left. And then, they talk about in Alma 32, the good seed and the bad seed. And I always talk about how I believe that those times it was just a bad seed, right? It doesn't mean that it was a horrible thing I was doing. It's not bad to read the Book of Mormon. It's not bad to go to church. Of course not. But my motivation was literally from something that is pure evil. It's an extremely powerful drug.
It's the parable of the sowers, right? They're sowing seed onto a rocky ground and it sprouted up real quick and then just burnt in the sun.
Exactly. And that's what happened, right? Just to a T, you nailed it right on the head.
So you were worried about telling your parents because you were like, I've done this whole come back to church thing before. I don't need to tell anyone about it because it's probably going to wear off. So and I didn't want to kept it.
I didn't want to like break their hearts again, because it was like when I came back the first time, they were stoked and they were so happy and they were like blown away, and they're like sending me conference talks and like talking to me when I'm fasting. And I was like, bro, hold on, this is a lot. Like I just came out of like doing drugs like a week ago. So like, and then it came back again and they were a little bit more chill, like, okay, like, yeah, like we're here for you. We want to support you, like whatever you need, like we're here for you kind of thing. And so then the third, I think it was the third or fourth time, I can't remember. That was when I kind of started to come back and really get it figured out. And so I didn't really tell my parents at first, because I was just kind of like, you know what, I'm gonna wait until like I'm actually like I'm here and I'm good and I have some time underneath my belt. Because before it was like maybe less than a month, like 2 or 3 weeks max. One of the times it was like 3 days. So, that's the thing. So I was like, okay, you know what? Like I'm not going to tell my parents yet. So I start coming back to church, and my sister's like, hey, you should like go to church. And I went to church, and then the guy's like, hey, you should go to the YSA. And I went to the YSA. And the first week I was going to go to the YSA, I had so much opposition. All these things happened that made it so I almost didn't even get to go. It happened to be state conference. I went to the wrong building. I got home. My sister's like, you shouldn't go. And then I was like, whatever, I'm just going to go. And I showed up. And all these things happened that, was just, I was barely even going to be able to get to church. And I start going. And then, so that was on August 20th. August 20th was the day that I sobered up. And then that year in October was kind of when I started to tell my parents. And I was like, hey, so like, just so you know, like I've been going to church. I'm now like a couple months sober. And like things are going good, and not to any fault of my parents at all, but they kind of were like happy and excited, but still kind of a little bit like, okay, we got to like see it, and like we want to see some things. And so it wasn't until I went to a Formula One race with my dad and my grandpa when my dad's like, all right, tomorrow's Sunday, so like we go. I'm like, yeah, of course we're going, let's go. And he's like, okay, it's the only meeting's at 9 a.m. I'm like, oh, okay, fine, no problem. And we had a late night. There was a concert the night before, so we pulled, and I think that's when my dad was kind of like, okay, like I'm going, but like, we'll see. And it wasn't that he didn't want me to go. It's just, he was like trying to see like, okay, like, are you gonna do this kind of thing? Are you for real about this? And so, I got up and we went to church, and that was kind of when it started to sink in for my dad a little bit more. And even then it still took a little bit of time for it to kind of start to really happen for them and to realize what was happening. And so from there, I start going to church and I actually start dating a returned missionary. And I'm debating, I got all my debt paid off from a couple hospital visits, actually, got a bunch of other debt paid off, and I have some money saved up, and I'm like, okay, I could either go on a mission, or not go on a mission, sorry, I could either like pursue getting married or like go to school. I got to figure out like what I'm supposed to do. My sister's like, well, you should pray about getting your patriarchal blessing. And then, that's
dude, your sister that's left the church is over here just like, maybe you should go to church. Maybe you should.
No, this was my sister that was a return missionary. My other sister was kind of just like watching what happened. Yeah.
Okay, I was like, yo, Wait. Okay, so I don't know if I'm confused. So the sister that was living with you is not the return missionary.
No, no.
It's the other one. Okay,
Yeah,
okay. I was like,
yeah.
dude, your sister's kind of weird. Like she
Read the book of
left
Mormon.
the church, but she's like,
She's
you
like,
should do this.
yeah. No, yeah. So that was my other sister, JC, my oldest sister, who served a mission, and she's the one who's kind of like, yeah, you should think about getting a patriarchal blessing. And so, I got that, and then that was when I was like, okay, I think like, I mean, I got it, and it was pretty frank. That was just like, I was like, okay, like, I
Brother
didn't know that was
Taylor, you
possible.
will serve a mission for the Church of
Yeah.
Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Pretty much, dude. Pretty much. I was like, okay. And like, I ain't gonna cap, dude. At first I was kind of like bummed. Cause I was like,
Yeah.
bro, I just got a good job. I'm dating a return missionary. I could go to school. I could get married. Like, you're really gonna tell me after all this that I gotta go and put it all on holding on. So my sister asked me after, she's like, so like, how do you feel? Right after my patriarchal blessing, she's like, how do you feel? It's like, well, I mean, I feel good, but yeah, I just feel like I got to go on a mission. She's like, yeah, you should. And I was like, I don't want to go on a mission. And she's like, okay. But like, yeah. Like, we'll figure it out. Just give it time, pray about it, all that. And so even when I left, I was like, okay, look, this is going to be hard. It's going to be tough, but I'm going to go. I'm going to do it. And, I'm going on a mission. I guess that's what I'm going to do. That's what God wants me to do. So I'm going to do it. And so, it was a journey even from then to get my papers in. It was like 6 months until I got my call. Like once I got my papers in, because like there was a bunch of delays. There was interviews. There was they had some questions, they wanted to know.
I was going to say, you got to ask, bro.
Yeah. I had a tattoo. I had that. I had to do an interview with like a therapist. I had to do all those other questions and stuff. And like, I had to do a lot. And it was funny because when I was filling out my missionary application, I filled out like where they asked about who I was in my past. I'm like, okay. And I just like laid it all out. And I read it to my dad, and he was like, like, that's really good. You also could just talk about like your testimony. And so he like told me what I could put in there, and so I like changed it all. And then and he's like, I want you to be able to go and stuff. And then I changed it to kind of what he wanted me to say. And then I was like, Dad, I'm sorry, but like, this just isn't me. I can't go, I got to put it in. And if I get rejected, then like, I told him everything and I tried my best and I was honest. And he's like, yeah, son, no, that's the better option. So I put it all in there, still with the idea that was kind of a chance that they would read it and be like, no shot, you're not going on a mission. Like, thanks for trying. I thought, President Nelson's going to look through and be like, yep, no, you can do a senior mission. Maybe. So, but it was a process. And then, I got my call, and even then getting out there, I turned 24 in training, and when I got on the mission, I was like, okay, this is going to be hard, but like, I'm going to do this thing. And my trainer was an absolute animal. He was a crazy workhorse. He was 18 years old. We were on bikes. It was pouring rain every day. And he had just got out of training himself, and he just wanted to be like, he was like a little, like a super energized, like miniature pit bull who just got the collar taken off. And like, I pulled up and I'm like, okay, it's going to be hard, but like, I've done hard things. I've worked, I did the wilderness camp, all these things. Like, bro, the mission's going to be like tough, but like, it's fine. Like, I'll get through it. And it's like the end of day 3, and I'm like, bro, this kid is destroying me. Like, I'm so tired. Like, we would make sandwiches and we'd throw them in our pockets, and we'd go out there and we'd knock doors. We'd knock doors 10 hours a day because he loved knocking doors.
Yo, where did you?
Yes, dude. That is my favorite way to serve a mission. Sorry, Kat, continue.
Where'd you serve?
I served in the Washington Everett mission. So yeah, I was up there. It's it's rainy. It's a state where people were not super stoked to see the missionaries. We got yelled at a lot. We got doors slammed, guns pulled, all that fun stuff. And I'm out there. We're biking like crazy every day, going to different houses, seeing different people, all this stuff. And then we stop for 15 minutes to like eat our sandwiches from our pockets, and then go back to knocking doors. And I'm like, I literally was just like dying. Like, we got into like one house, like the first like 3 weeks of my mission. Like, that was it. And he was fully anti. He literally brought us in there to bash. And so it was hard, dude. It was hard in the beginning. And so I told my mission person, I'm like, dude, I think this kid's gonna kill me. Like, I'm not gonna be able to do this. Like, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to go. I don't think I can do this. And so it was then that he actually banned my trainer from knocking doors that transfer. And he's like, you guys gotta like, because there's other more effective ways like visiting the members or like, you know, visiting previous dots or friends. So you're still knocking doors, but not just like we were just like we're like pest control boys going out there like every door. We're marking off neighborhoods, bro. Like we're doing everything. So and so that was really hard. And that's what I learned right early on in the mission, is that the mission was going to be really hard. But
can we backtrack just a little bit, because and I don't know, from what I'm listening to, right? Where was your testimony at this point? Like, because there's a point when it's like what it sounds like from what you're saying, is that there's a point in the church when you go through the motions and it's working. So you're like, I like these motions, right?
Yeah.
But then there's a point when you get over and you're like, holy crap, this is freaking true. Like it like burns inside of you. Like it's something that you don't even really know how to like not tell people about it. When did you think that happened to you before your mission, or was that something that happened on your mission? Because for me, that was something that happened on my mission.
Yeah,
but when do you think that kind of moment was for you?
Honestly, it happened for me on my mission as well. It was like before I got out there, all I knew was I was like, okay, I think the church is true and the Book of Mormon's true. And I know that I'm sober because I read the Book of Mormon. And the Book of Mormon says that I'm sober because of Jesus Christ, because Jesus Christ took on my pains and afflictions and my temptations. And so all I knew going in was like, okay, the Book of Mormon's true. If I meet anyone who's an alcoholic or a drug addict, if I get them to read it, they can be sober like me because of Jesus Christ. That was like my very basic testimony. And so that was where I started, whereas on the flip side, my trainer was the kind of guy, he told me in my training, he said, yeah, I've never really sped before. I was like, what? He's like, no, I mean, like maybe on accident, but I've never intentionally like driven faster than the speed limit, because it says in the scriptures that, we need to obey the laws of the land. And I was like, bro, I was 16 when I commit my first felony. Like, we are two very different people. Very different people. And I'm like, this is going to be tough, But his testimony was like that it was rock solid. No questions. And, some people, I don't really like when people use the term like blind faith. But I would just say it's like faith-filled faith. Just like, bro had faith squared. Simple as that. Like, he's just there and he just believed and he had faith and he kept moving on, and people would bash us. They'd say horrible things and it didn't even matter for him. Like he was just like, I know it's true. Like he'd even bring up some things that were anti that people told him all this stuff. He's like, yeah, but like, this is why it's not true. And this is that. And so we had very different testimonies. Right. But that ended up being a really good thing. There's a scripture in John that I was just reading recently that reminds me a lot about kind of how when I first got out on my mission. And so this is in John 1, it's verse 33. And so what he says, and I knew him not, but he that sent me to baptize with water, the same said to me, upon whom shalt thou see the Spirit descending and remaining on him? The same is that which baptizeth with the Holy Ghost. And especially that part in the beginning, like I highlight that part, like I knew him not, but he that sent me to baptize with water. That's how I felt. It's that he knew me, I didn't know him, and all I was supposed to do is go out there and teach people about the Book of Mormon and help them get baptized. Like, that's pretty much all that I knew. And so, that was how my mission started. That was where my testimony started. And from there, it just got stronger and it changed as the mission got more difficult. And I learned and I grew. And, there were points in the mission where, I would have a tough time in the beginning because of how hard we were working. And then later I got to the point that it was hard because of how hard we weren't working, right? That we could be working harder, And so I think every missionary kind of has that turn on their mission when they realize the joy that can come from working hard and the blessings that can come from
For sure, dude. Was President Oaks your mission president the whole time?
Yeah, he was. Yep.
That's so.
Yep, President Oaks. Yep. And he, he really highlighted a lot of that for me. That was just, he told a lot of stories about the necessity we had to work hard, And he always talked about his companion he had on his mission who worked him like a horse, and who just drove him into the ground. And he would sleep between appointments in the car, and he was just tired and exhausted, and he couldn't keep up. But he said he loved those transfers, and that's the transfer that he remembered. And so it was when I was out for about 6 months that I had a companion, Elder Ellis, who, my companion, Elder Brown, was like this, but I didn't appreciate it at that point because it was the very beginning of my mission.
Yeah.
And then I got with Elder Ellis, and at this point, I'd actually been swapped to serve Spanish. And so I started serving in Spanish.
Wait. You weren't called Spanish?
No, I was called English. Yeah.
And in 6 months, did you serve the rest of your mission as a Spanish elder?
Until I got called as an AP, or I got transferred as an AP, and then I was an AP for 4.5 months, and then that was in English, and then I finished in Spanish. So I did a year and a transfer in Spanish total.
Dang, bro! Yeah, you hopped on the call before we started recording, and you and Roy were like speaking Spanish. I was like, what the frick?
Yeah,
yeah, that's sick, dude.
True. Yep.
Yo, so okay, how was being an assistant that close to President Oaks, dude?
Remarkable. Oh my gosh.
I just got here. You were an assistant to the president of President Oaks,
yeah,
bro?
I know, dude. I know.
Holy cow, dude.
It was I wouldn't trade those few months I had with him for anything. First of all, I learned so much. I felt like during those months,
dude, he literally is he's like a sex therapist, but he works with kids that like have sexual issues, like 13-year-old boys that are like have abused their sisters or things like that. Like he works with kids that like have real problems, like insane problems.
Yeah.
So that must have been incredible to listen to, like his take on addiction and things like that. Like that must be great.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, that's why they say, I didn't care about getting called to the Everett mission. What I cared about was, getting called to President Oaks. As soon as I got to know who he was and see the kind of person he was, I had a lot of those people that I met on my mission where you kind of have those figures where you kind of see them in the scriptures, but it's like you don't really see it. Like you learn about Ammon, you're like, okay, Ammon's a G, like he's sick. I would like to be like him, but like at the same time, it's not like I can be like Ammon and go out and chop people's arms off. Right?
Yeah.
But then you serve around someone like Dan Oaks and you're like, oh, like, or I had some companions like that as well, where I'm like, dude, I want to be like this guy.
Yeah.
Like this guy is always thinking about other people. Like he is always picking people up that are down. He's always looking for opportunities to serve like this. And it was like, my mind was just blown. I was like, I didn't even think this like quality of human existed. And, I'm not going to put President Oaks on some pedestal and say he's perfect. He made mistakes. I made mistakes. He's still a guy. But that's the beauty of being a disciple of Jesus Christ that I saw through him, was that he made mistakes and he moved forward and he just loved Jesus Christ and loved the missionaries and taught the gospel and lived a good life. And that's who he was to the core.
Yeah, President Oaks is like, when you read that thing about, I think it's about Moroni or Mormon, like if every man was like unto Moroni, the very gates of hell would be shaken or whatever. It's like, I don't think President Oaks is, obviously he's not perfect. But if every man in the world was like President Oaks,
oh yeah,
the gates of hell would be having a someone be pull the fire alarm.
Captain Moroni wasn't perfect, but if everyone was like Captain Moroni,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, dude, that's exactly how. Like, anytime I remember one time, and this is I feel so ashamed that this was one time we did a trek, and I remember we were like pushing hand carts and stuff, and President Oaks rode by us on a 4-wheeler, and I was young. I didn't even know he was our stake president. But I was ticked. I was like, who the crap is this dude riding a 4-wheeler and I'm pushing a hand cart? And I remember telling my dad I was ticked. I was like, who's this guy? This dude just riding a 4-wheeler. My dad ripped me a new one, bro. He was like, if you knew like what President Oaks like has to go through and all the things that he, like his health and things that he's dealt with and who he is as a guy, he was like, trust me, you would be thinking.
His daughter had cancer at that time, probably.
Right.
Yeah, his daughter did have cancer at that time, and it was like I had no idea what kind of man he was. And after my dad kind of chewed me out, I really started paying attention to him whenever he spoke.
Yeah.
And Yeah, inspired. Dude he's an inspired man.
At state conferences, dude, he would get up and it was like everyone was just like you could hear their ears turning on. That's how like
Yeah.
everyone just quiet and just what is and the way he talks was just like just
Yeah.
a slow, soothing look, guys, like this is how it is. This is and
Yeah.
that's amazing that
Yeah.
you got to be that close with him. That's so sick.
That you got to be
Man,
with him, dude.
I wouldn't trade
AP
that.
to President Oaks is probably that's an AP spot. I'm not gonna lie, I'd probably try to get. Like
Oh
that
yeah.
would probably be one like I would attempt to get that one because
Right, right.
he's awesome. Um
Yeah.
and I didn't go back to so and we're kind of running out of time. We've been on for a
Yeah.
while.
Yeah.
I'm sure we could talk for literally hours and
Right.
hours and hours. But I do want to go back to something you said, Van, that I loved is you said, um, I don't know the church is true. And I don't even know 100% if the Book of Mormon's true. What I do know is that the Book of Mormon's telling me I'm sober because of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And in the end, that's what this whole podcast is about, right? Like, that's what we're trying to do is point people back to Christ. And we just had a guy on last week. He's a gay man and lived a gay lifestyle and then got married and still in the temple and has two kids and is like very active in the church. And when I asked him like, well, what's the answer? How do you find the answer? He just said like, oh, it's Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ is the answer.
Yeah.
We had another guy on that
Well,
was he's a
and
free
I think
oh, go ahead, Ket.
real quick with the guy you might have even heard about him. His name's Timber Harward. If you haven't, look up his name and listen to that dude. Well, watch the episode that we did. Like
Yeah.
that dude's testimony about the atonement. We were just like beside ourselves. Like, but Timber, you're attracted to men and but you're married to a woman and you're a covenant keeper. Like, how do you do it? And he said nothing is immutable when you have Christ on your side. Like it doesn't matter if you want to get closer to God, the way to do that is through Christ. And I'm sure you've felt the same way. It's like looking back, you're like, yeah, I went through hell and back, but look, it was Jesus that got
Yeah.
I didn't I merit nothing of myself. This is
Right.
Jesus we're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
when did it hit you? Kind of ending, I guess, and I don't know if this is a good place to end on,
Yeah.
but when did it hit you like, oh, that was the atonement? Like when did you realize it? Because there is a repentance process, you go through it, but really sometimes when human beings go through the repentance process, we think, oh, I'm just cleaning myself up. But when did it hit you like, oh,
That was
this
Jesus.
happened in Gethsemane
Yeah.
2000
Yeah.
years ago? Like when did
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
hit you?
It honestly it hit when I was a missionary and I was studying Alma 34 is really when that came to me. Banger of a chapter. Love the chapter. I've studied that with youth on my mission and all as many oftentimes as I can because I love I'm studying programming right now and I love programming and what I felt like I found when I read Alma 34 was I felt like I'd seen like what program God wrote for like all of humanity. And he says, that there's the great plan of repentance. Let me see if I can find the verse here real quick, but it says I can't find it right here on the top of my head. But basically when he talks about how there's a law and there's an order to the law and when there's a punishment that's affixed to every law, that God is a God of law, there's a punishment affixed to every law. And if there is not a repentant heart, then the law executeth itself and mercy is not given, and then the punishments are administered for breaking the law. But if there's a repentant heart, then the new variable in coding terms of mercy gets put into place, which then covers all the sins and wipes the user away from their mistakes, right? And so I was reading that and it just like clicked, like just like that I was like, okay, God has written this beautiful and just beautifully mastered and flawless program that going along with that analogy in programming terms, when you write a good program that works well, it will always work no matter what it's given, no matter what it's given, no matter what you input, no matter what happens. If you write good programs, it will never fail. It has no flaws. And I recognized that same kind of nature inside of, the atonement, that it was a giant funnel that catches beyond any human, anywhere they're going to go. It's large enough for everyone, and there's room for more. There's leftovers, and so the atonement really hit me hard. The same thing hit. We got a visit from, I think it's Elder Nielsen, who's a 70, and he talks about the loaves and the fishes. And he said he always bugged him. It always bugged him how they fed everyone, the 5,000, and there was leftovers. And he's like, there's got to be something there. And some people say like, oh, it's just to show that like, so there's no doubt about the miracle, that there's no doubt that he had plenty of food, that the people were full, or they weren't like, so there wouldn't be any doubt. And I think that's part of it. But what he said is he looks at that as the atonement of Jesus Christ is there's plenty, and there's some, there's leftovers, there's extras, that no matter how deep I went, how many drugs I sold, how many times I struggled with pornography, or how bad I felt, or hearts I broke, or things that I did, that the Savior Jesus Christ went through and he suffered for each one of those mistakes for me personally. And so, the Garden of Gethsemane turned into something different for me, because I always looked at the Garden of Gethsemane as a time when Jesus Christ was suffering and in pain. And they talk about him being tempted, but it didn't hit me that in the same level and in the same way that I was tempted to drink alcohol or do drugs after trying to sober up, as equally as appealing as it was for me to drink and do drugs, it was equally appealing for the Savior in the Garden of Gethsemane to do the same thing, right? It was that he was given those temptations and he still said no. And so it turned into this thing of like, oh no, it wasn't like he was bombarded with all these temptations that any human would succumb to. It was like, no, he was tempted in the same way, with the same level, in the same exact appetite and desire that I had. He felt that exactly. And he said no. And so if I take his hand, he will help me also say no. And so, that's been addiction. That's been all of it, is that it's been learning that the Savior's hand is there, and you accept his hand, and those temptations come. And just like he said no, you will also say no. And so it's like he's right there next to me, and there's some drug dealer walking down the line, and he's walking up and offering everybody to do drugs. And first he goes to Jesus Christ and offers him, and he says no. And then I look to my older brother, who I love and respect and have a huge testimony of the things that he's done. I'm like, you know what? I'm also going to say no, because he said no, right? And so if he says yes, I'm going to say yes. So if he says yes to going fasting, I'm going to fast. If he says yes to going to the temple, I'm going to go to the temple. I'm going to follow the example of my big brother.
And I love that so much, because sometimes people frame it in the way where they're like, if you sin, you're hurting Jesus, right? And that's kind of like a guilt tripping type of way, I guess you could say. But the way that you framed it right there is so cool, of like, if you sin, you're just not following him. Like, he's asked you not to, and he's also not done it. Like, he's decided not to. You're just not following him. You're not being a sheep. You're not being like one of his flock. You're not being a good younger brother. In essence, of where you're not following your Lord and Savior. And I think when your testimony can get to that point where it's like, you're not doing it out of guilt, you're doing it out of love.
Yeah.
That's when you've made it, bro. That's when you're made.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I love that. I think that's actually a pretty good note to end on. As far as everything goes. He's the GOAT, right? He's the greatest to ever do it. He's literally the greatest to ever do it. And we love him for it. So
thank you so much, man.
Go ahead, Kat.
Thank you so much, man. This has been such an awesome conversation. Like, the way you talk about your experience, dude, we could literally. Okay, we're making a 4-season, 8-episode.
Yes,
that's what we're gonna do. Talking about how Christ is. He's the way, dude. He's the GOAT.
And dude, oh sorry. Go ahead, Kat.
Good. You're good, bro.
But talking about how Christ is the GOAT, how he did it for you. But thanks, bro. Thank you, man.
Yeah.
Kat, you can go ahead and end the recording there, but that was great. That was awesome.